Hello again, everyone. Today we're finally at one of the hardest and most fun units of Croy. We're getting into prepositions. So today we're going to talk about the things that Chapter 6 introduces, and it'll be fun. We're starting to get into more complex, more interesting sentences, and so this is going to be good. So first, let's review. You have um, your first declension nouns, and your first declension nouns are marked by alpha or eta at the ending of the noun. Uh, Often this is called like the A-class nouns. Alpha and eta specifically give feminine nouns, and these feminine nouns uh, are unique to the first declension. They make up the majority of first declension nouns. Then you have second declension nouns. Second declension nouns such as os, which is usually masculine nouns, and on, which is neuter nouns. And some examples of those would be hora phone, a and a for the feminine nouns, huios, which is sun for the masculine second declension, and teknon for neuter nouns. So this is review, but so what about the new forms that Chapter 6 introduces? Well, in Chapter 6, a new form of the first declension is introduced, ace. Ace, although it's being an A-class noun, is a masculine noun. This includes nouns like prophetes. Can you guess what prophetes means? You can probably see it, prophet. Prophet is a masculine noun, but it's first declension, and that's marked by the final sigma after the eta. This is not a genitive. This is the masculine nominative singular. This is not a genitive. This is the masculine nominative singular of prophetes. And then there's also another kind of second declension noun introduced, which is the other kind of os. And this os ending looks the exact same as the masculine os, but sometimes it's a feminine noun. So some examples of this would be eremos, which means wilderness. So John the Baptist cried out in the eremos, in the wilderness. And it's, besides that, it looks the same, but it's feminine. So parsing first declension nouns, let's take our prophetes and see if we can make some sense of this parsing. The real genitive is the masculine second declension genitive, u. So you know that ace is not the genitive, u is, because it's masculine, and it's one of the first declension. Beyond that, ace, as you can see in contrast, is your nominative. But the rest just seems to look like a regular eta class first declension noun that we learned back in Chapter 3, with the exception of the vocative being an alpha. But it's basically, we know this, the only thing that really changes is the nominative and the genitive in these masculine first declension nouns. As for parsing the second declension feminine nouns, you have, for instance, he hadas, the way, he eremos, the desert. Now, these nouns, these second declension nouns, are always parsed the same way. So, hadas, hadu, hado, hadan, right? These are all the forms of second declension nouns. It works the same for these feminine nouns. So how do you tell if it's feminine or masculine? Well, two ways. One, you memorize your vocab. You memorize the article next to it, as well as the noun. You memorize the article next to it, next to the noun, so that you know what gender it is. But if you forget and you're reading along, well, you look for the definite article. The definite article will always clue you in, will always clue you in, will always clue you in as to what gender this noun is. I repeated it 3 times on purpose because this is game changing. Because once you get to more confusing nouns, you're going to be super thankful you see the definite article and can recognize, oh wait, that's feminine. And so that will help you a lot in parsing. Moving on, now that we've gone over first declension nouns, let's go to prepositions. And while prepositions always mean pretty much the same thing in English, if they take different cases for the nouns they're referring to, they can mean very different things. Even with the same words, with a different case, can mean very different things for different prepositions. So I took this list and I modified it from Croy directly. So you can credit most of this from Croy. But some of these I kind of shifted a little bit to comment on. So you have apo, ace, ek, en, pros, dia, meta, and peri. And all of these kind of mean different things, like apo, from, ace is into, ek is always going to be out of or by, en is always, we're usually going to be in. Well, it can mean different, slightly nuanced things, but in is what chapter 6 teaches you. It's not always true, but it's better to learn that now and then see kind of the nuanced ways you use it later. So if you notice, by and out of, usually ek or x is going to be out of, like out of, like exit. You're going out. Sometimes, though, it can be by. On rare occasions, it can be by the house, and this always takes the genitive. En, I wanted to point out that it's in, but give one example for ease of communication. Ein tes hemera is in the day, but can also be on the day. In and on in this context kind of indicates like it's on that day. I feel like I should give you a little more options in translating. You'll get more and more for en later, but this kind of serves you well for now. Pros. Pros is usually to or towards. So pros ten thalasan is to the sea. But notice in green here, pros tous anthropous, with the men. So it's usually going to be to or towards, but pros sometimes can be with the men. You're usually just going to see to towards, but since the vocab has with, I wanted to show you an example of where it could be with the men. And it usually depends on what the noun is, because with the sea doesn't really make sense, but with the men can make a lot more sense. Then you have dia. Dia, however, does change with a different form of the noun, with a different case. So in the genitive, dia tes eremu, through the desert. Dia with the genitive is through, but dia with the accusative is because of. So because of the land is dia ten gain. Another one is meta. Meta can take a genitive or an accusative. When it takes a genitive, meta becomes with the children. When it takes an accusative, it's after. So meta tein himeran is after the day, as opposed to meta ton teknon is with the children. And the last one that can be two different forms is peritu mathetu, about the disciple, or maybe also concerning the disciple. About or concerning is the genitive. And the accusative, periton oikon, is around the house. So you go around the house, that's the accusative form. And so it might be good to think of it as dia, meta, and peri have two different forms the preposition could take, which significantly changes the meaning. And it's gonna suck, but you're just gonna have to memorize it. Especially when you get the prepositions that take upwards of 3 different cases, and each one has their own different meaning. Prepositions can also be used like the attributive adjective. In review, you have two different forms, the first and the second attributive. The definite article adjective noun is your first attributive. And then the second attributive is definite article noun, definite article adjective. But you can take those prepositional phrases and use them like the adjectives to refer to the noun and the subject, or in the object. So definite article prepositional phrase noun, definite article noun, definite article prepositional phrase. How would that look? Well, let's look at this example. Ha ento oiko anthropos. So the in the house man. In the house is your prepositional phrase, but it's in the middle. This is, can you guess what kind of attributive this is? It's first attributive, the in the house man. We would translate that as the man who is in the house. The man who is in the house. Now, a quick word before we continue with those prepositional phrases being used as attributives. We didn't really go over the special cases that akuo and pistuo can take since we're talking about cases and prepositions. I wanted to throw this here because this is going to come up a lot. Akuo can take an accusative or a genitive object. So, for an example, akuo tes phones or akuo tein phonein are translated the exact same way. I hear the voice. Tes phones is genitive, but it acts as the direct object to akuo, just as the accusative would normally act as the direct object. So think of it like, I hear of the voice, or I hear the voice. But again, you'll translate both, I hear the voice. That's how this is being used. The other word I want to talk about is pistuo. Pistuo takes a dative object. Usually. It usually takes a dative object and only sometimes takes an accusative object. So, pistuo to theo becomes I believe in God. I trust God. The dative here is being used as my direct object. I believe God. I trust God. And so that's usually how pistuo is used in our Greek New Testament. So, but also you can take pistuo as an accusative, and with this you can take pistuo with a prepositional phrase. So see if you can translate this. Pistuete eis ton uranon. All right. So now that you've given a second to pause the video, this is a question. We can tell by the semicolon at the end. Do you believe in heaven or into heaven? You see the ace and you think into. Well, here it's better translated. Do you believe in heaven? You'll see this pistuete ace a lot in the text. And I just wanted to put this here so that you know to translate it as in and not into. This is idiomatic. Believe into, trust into is the idea, but it's translated best in English as in. So that's what I wanted to point out, is how this, instead of going into, is just in here. So one practice, you can pause the video and try translating this on your own. Blepomen ton theon ton en urano. All right. We see the God who is in heaven. See? This is, can you guess what kind of attributive this is? This is second attributive. One more thing I wanted to point out is neuter plural subjects. Ta tekna mene pros ton prophetein ton diakoon. Give you a second to try translating this one. See if you can do that. Remember to look for your subject, then your verb, and then your object. All right? So if you were translating that, did you get confused because ta tekna is plural and mene is singular? Why is a plural subject taking a singular verb? I thought they had to agree. Well, the answer is neuter plural subjects often, in fact usually, take the third singular verb ending. They can take plural, but they often take the third singular. So you'll see a instead of usi or usin for the neuter plural. So this would be, the children remain not to the prophet, but with the righteous prophet. You see that second attributive, ton prophetein, ton dikaion, becomes the prophet, the righteous one, or the righteous prophet. So that's an example of a whole bunch of things we learned all together in one sentence. I hope you can kind of see each part. And so now you might have gotten intimidated watching this. And so I wanted to include this little bit at the end so that you would feel encouraged and just be excited for what's coming next. Because eventually you will be able to read this, what's in front of my screen. Hade theos, tes elpidos plerosai humas passes, karas kai arenes entopistuein, esto perisuein humas ente elpidi, and duname pneumatos hagiou. Pepesmai de adofoimu kai autos ego peri humon, hati kai autoi mestoi este. Agathosunes pepleromenos menoi passe tes gnoseos, dunamenoi kai allelus nuthetein. So let's translate that in English. Now, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you believe, so that you might abound in hope with the power of the Holy Spirit. And I am convinced, my brothers, even I myself, concerning you, that even you yourselves are full of goodness, having been filled with all knowledge, being able to teach one another. This is going to be you one day, is being filled with all knowledge, able to teach one another. And this is why you do this, is so that God can work through you in a new way through the reading of His Word. And with that encouragement, I wanted to end this lesson. All right, you take care.